Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the 7th Annual Symposium of the Center for Emerging Markets at Northeastern University. I am Ravi Ramamurti, Professor of International Business at the Damore McKim School of Business and also Director of the Center for Emerging Markets. This year again, we're doing this event jointly with the Cornell's Emerging Markets Institute, and Lourdes Casanova, who's the academic director of their institute, is not able to be here because she had a personal family emergency that required her to go to Spain, but she will be connecting with us by video, hopefully in the course of the morning. So I know she very much wanted to be here. I'm going to now introduce our dean, who is going to say a few words of welcome, and then I'll come back again and give you a very quick overview of what we have planned for you this morning, and then we'll be on to our opening keynote speaker. Hugh Courtney is Dean of the Damore McKim School of Business. He's been with us now for a few years. He has a PhD in economics from MIT, like our first speaker, who also has a PhD, not from MIT, undergraduate from MIT, but a PhD from UPenn. He spent a number of years with McKinsey & Company in their strategy practice. He's written some best-selling books and articles in Harvard Business Review and other places on strategy under uncertainty. Boy, can we use that view these days. And that's, in fact, the volatility, which is the theme of this year's symposium, very much picks up on some of the work Hugh has done in the past. He's been with us now for a few years, and he's been a supporter of the Center for Emerging Markets and our general initiatives in the international business field, where you might know Northeastern has a really very strong faculty. So let me invite you to come up and say a few words.
Well, thank you, Ravi, and it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome you all here today as well. On behalf of all of our staff and faculty colleagues in the Damore McKim School of Business and our Center for Emerging Markets, I also want to thank in absentia Lourdes, who will be joining us. We have this terrific partnership with the Emerging Market Institute at Cornell, and this is our third conference together, and it has really been a terrific collaboration, and delighted to have some of our folks from Cornell joining us virtually today. Here at Northeastern, our Center for Emerging Markets is actually one of the exceptional outlets that our faculty members have and utilize to fully immerse themselves in collaborative research, teaching, and outreach programs, such as today's conference. In our world-renowned, as Ravi suggested, we're really a top 10 international business faculty in the world today, and they're motivated to solve issues, and the reason they're top 10, they're motivated to solve issues that matter. And their publication and outreach choices are guided by the desire to impact both academic thought and business practice. That should be kind of a straightforward common goal, but unfortunately in academia, sometimes we see an unfortunate divide between the pure academic research and business practice. But of course, in any applied discipline like business, if our research is not shaped by and in turn shaping business practice, what are we doing it for, right? And so events like today, which bring together people from practice, from academia, students, the media, and others, who are all passionate about and yearning to better understand the role that various emerging markets are playing in our global economy is quite important. Because again, in the end, it's all about impact. And we know that emerging markets will continue to play a disproportionate role in the future of our global economy. And our Center for Emerging Market enables our faculty, students, and business partners to better understand as well as shape that future. I do want to say that today's conference is really a perfect example of bringing those stakeholders together, and it's really important work. So I do want to say a few thank yous as well as Ravi did. First, I want to thank Ravi, who's a tireless leader, the founder and the tireless leader of our Center for Emerging Markets, by far the most active center at the Damore McKim School of Business today. Ravi will often bring in a couple of speakers a week and keep our calendars very busy. That is a good thing. That is a really good thing, because again, the diversity of voices that show up at on this campus on any given week different expertise in different functional areas and different regions of the world is fantastic. I do want to again acknowledge Lourdes and our colleagues and friends at the Emerging Markets Institute at Cornell. And I want to acknowledge Hannah, who has Hannah Scahill has made this all happen today logistically, and her team. Lots of work, and thank you very much, much appreciated. I also want to thank the Center's sponsors, including one of our speakers today, David Nardone, who's with us, who's been a generous sponsor of the Center for Emerging Markets work now for a few years, and enables us to host you like this today. Last but not least, I want to thank all of you personally for being here today. Again, we really believe that dialogue and time actually in residence together, not just virtually, is crucial to solving and better understanding the role that emerging markets are playing in our economy. And we love to be a convener on that. That is really the role for our Center of Emerging Markets. So thank you and welcome, and hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks. Back to Ravi.
Okay, before I introduce our first keynote speaker, let me draw your attention to the newsletter of the center, which is on your tables. If you feel free to take it or to skim it. It gives you an idea of what we do in the center and the range of activities in which we engage. The theme for this year's symposium is thriving in volatile emerging markets. And I don't think it needs too much of an introduction. I think most of us recognize, and if you're just following the business press, that about even as recently as 2010, the emerging markets were on top of the world. This was 2 years after the global financial crisis of 2008. It looked in 2009 as if the emerging markets were going to sink along with the developed economies. But then they rebounded. And for a while, we actually talked about the uncoupling of the emerging markets from the developed markets. It was as if the emerging markets were on a course of growth that nothing could stop them. Even the global financial crisis was not going to stop them. And of course, that was partly the result of the stimulus program in China that allowed China to rebound, which then allowed commodity prices to rebound. And for a while, it seemed as if we were back to the good old days. But subsequently, we've seen that indeed the happy days of 2000 to 2007 or 2010 are thing of the past and may never come again. And we're back to some countries slowing down, some countries actually going into recession. Most notable examples being Russia and Brazil. Brazil having now 2 years of negative growth and expected to have another year of negative growth next year. With the currencies falling, with inflation actually rising in some of these countries, foreign exchange reserves in some cases are also slipping. Stock markets have taken a beating. Interest rates are going up. And so we're back to the kinds of volatility we used to see in the emerging markets if you go back to the 60s and 70s and 80s. And I think I'm now old enough that I remember this, I'm sorry to say. But this volatility and the heterogeneity in the performance of emerging markets used to be the rule and not what we saw after 2000 was really the exception. So now in this environment in which you have some countries doing better than others, many countries having difficulties with their macroeconomic performance, the political volatility in these countries is also starting to become more important. I don't think it's unrelated to the economic volatility. In good times, even if there are political problems, they tend to be swept under the carpet. You don't necessarily hear about them. But when the economic conditions worsen, then the political issues also surface to the top. And I think we've seen that, for instance, in Brazil. But in many of the countries that we're going to hear about, whether it's Thailand, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's Brazil, these countries in the last few years have experienced the kind of volatility that I've just described. And yet, the companies we're going to hear from, the organizations we're going to hear from, are doing still pretty well in even these countries. So the question for the entire morning really is, what is it that allows some companies in some industries to do quite well and actually to earn fairly attractive rates of return despite the volatility that we're seeing in these economies. So the volatility is not a reason to pull out of these countries. It's really a challenge to develop the capabilities to be able to do well despite the volatility. And very often, the local companies have figured out the way to deal with that. And so some of our speakers actually represent local companies. They're not US companies. They're not even sometimes multinational companies. They may be operating just in their home country, but doing extremely well. So one of the things we want to learn from these examples is what do different types of companies have to do in order to do well in this kind of volatile environment? If you're a local company, if you're a local multinational company, that is a local company that has gone global, or if you're a US multinational company. And really, if you look at our program, we have all of these types of companies represented in our agenda.